Hi everyone, welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I am your Friday hostess, Natalie. This week's topic, the power of trees. This is a topic that really is near and dear to my heart. It means a lot to me. I actually like trees more than I like people. And I think that trees are probably one of the most beneficial things on this planet. So I'm going to talk a little bit today. I do have some notes here, so you might see me looking over. I did some research so this week for today's video. Hello, okay, can't speak today. You will have to be a little understanding. Today I've had an unbelievable week, personally. It's not been unbelievable in a good way. It's been rather horrific, frankly, and getting worse as the week wears on. So please be patient with me while I try to collect my thoughts and get myself together. Power of trees. First off, the most important thing for me when it comes to trees and their power is that they are phenomenally calming, grounding things. When you think about the tree, it's probably one of the largest plants on the planet. We could not live without them. I mean, if you're talking about just the basic benefits of the tree, it provides us oxygen to breathe. It recycles our carbon dioxide that we put out. Trees reduce ground soil erosion. They provide shade. They give natural beauty. They provide fruit and that sort of thing. Nuts are considered a fruit, folks, but nuts and fruits for us to eat. And on top of that, there are many medicinal benefits of trees. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. What I want to talk about right now is the grounding power of trees, because trees are from the earth. I equate them myself with the elemental of earth. So whenever I'm using something of a tree, this is what I was getting into in my last video on the elemental of earth, was that for me, wands are kind of a combination thing, especially if you make your wand out of wood, which most people do, or even paper, which comes from wood. It's going back to an earth element, something that comes from the earth, grows out of the earth, and is rooted deeply in the earth. So it's something that I do or try to do pretty frequently. Lately I haven't been able to, and I really need to, especially this week, is to ground myself. And I have an oak tree out front of my house. What I will do is I will go to that tree and I will sit down underneath it, and I will put my back up against the trunk of the tree, lean my head back against it, and put my feet flat on the ground, barefoot. I take my shoes off and I sit barefoot. And I actually just allow the tree to absorb all of the bleh and ground it for me. So I find trees to be very comforting. Something else that I'm sure has occurred to other people, but when I was younger I used to kind of think I was weird for thinking this, but trees talk to us. They sing to us. If you've ever been out in a forest or out in the woods somewhere where you can hear the rustling of the trees, it's almost calming, sort of like ocean waves. And so they associate very well also with the element of air when you're talking about that aspect of a tree. And so they incorporate the element of air and combine it with earth and give us this rustling that's very calming and peaceful, at least to me. And to me, I've always called it the trees singing. The trees are singing to me, or they're whispering to me. So a lot of people get creeped out by being around trees at night, and you see things like in the movie, the original movie, Poltergeist, where the tree reaches in and grabs a kid and starts. I've never seen trees that way. I have never met a tree I didn't like. I've never seen a creepy tree. So, I mean, I'm sure there are some, you know, like any other thing that to me has a personality. I think trees have personalities. To me, you know, I'm sure there's a creepy tree out there. I just haven't come across one. I don't fear a lot of things, and I certainly don't fear trees. So that's just some of the benefits I get from them. I find them excellent meditative spots. When I was a young child, I used to sit under the trees and read. I climbed trees. I would live in a tree if I could. If I could have a tree house, I would so be Swiss Family Robinson right now. So I was very jealous of that family when I was a kid. Not even a real family. So now I want to get into some of the medicinal benefits of tea. A lot of you are familiar with the fact that willow bark, particularly white willow bark, and I'm not going to give any scientific names here because I don't have that information in front of me, but I will tell you, research it well, because you do have to be cautious. As with any other herb, trees and tree bark and leaves and and roots and things you have got to be careful with, because not everything is good for you. But white willow bark was often used by the Native Americans to reduce pain. They would strip the bark and chew it, and believe it or not, that's the basis of aspirin. If you've ever tasted willow bark tea, you will know immediately. You'll be like, oh God, it tastes like aspirin, because that's where aspirin comes from. Aspirin is a synthetic form of that, but it used to originally have white willow bark in it. So I want to give you guys a source here that I have. There's an article you can Google called Using Trees as Medicine. It's by Ellen Ever Hopman. No, it's backwards. Ellen Ever Hopman. And she has some wonderful information here, preparing trees for medicinal use, green etiquette, and then she goes into, this was a rather lengthy article, into the different types of trees. The first one, alder. And then I liked the fact that she gave pictures. Now, I didn't print this time in color, but she gives you all the different useful parts of the tree. She shows you which are the parts that are usable out of specific trees. And she kind of goes alphabetical: elder, elm, hawthorn. So some of these are things that are native to Native America and things that are not. There was another article I wanted to refer you guys to, and let me see if I can get to it here, because it got mixed in. There was a blog that I found called Trees Are Powerful Healers, and it's called Tree Medicine. Looks like this. Now, I will tell you, this site kind of came off a little spammy, like it kept wanting me to sign up for their newsletter, and it kind of wouldn't let me go on without it. I did not sign up for the newsletter. I found some way to get around it, but they talk about various different trees around the world and their basic medicinal purposes. Trees have been used for almost every kind of medicine out there. They've been used for feminine issues. Slippery elm bark is used for the throat and for some other things, and they use the inner part of the bark. And this article is very good about talking about that. You use the leaves, the roots, the branches, so it varies depending on the tree. Okay. Another thing that trees are good for, obviously, is fuel. Okay. I'm not big on cutting down trees wholesale. I do understand that in the logging industry, they have to replant trees, because if they don't, they're going to put themselves out of business. But it does indeed break my heart every time I watch them fell a tree. I personally, when I gather things from trees that I'm going to use, I either gather it from the trees that are in my yard, or I'll go out to the greenway behind my house, and I prefer to take things from the ground, or things that I can see are not wick, meaning living, things that have kind of died or are in the process of dying, that it's not going to be savable or salvageable. Then I will harvest from that. I am always careful to give a blessing and a thanks and to leave an offering when I do that, regardless, because that tree still gave its life, and even after it's died, if it's something you found on the ground, it's still giving to you, and we need to still be thankful to that and put that back out there in the universe. So I would love to be able to go into specific detail about the various types of trees. I will talk about some of the more common ones. I mentioned slippery elm just a minute ago. Slippery elm, I know to be good for throat infections, because I've used it myself for that. Again, it's going to be something that you're going to use the inner part of the bark, and you can buy that from Amazon, from Star West Botanicals, by the way. Just look up slippery elm bark, and I'm sure you'll find usable parts of that. Birch is another tree that's common to this kind of area, and it is very good for like bladder things. So if you're getting kind of a bladder, or you're kind of stopped up and you need a laxative, you can put it into a tea. It's also good for kidney infections, which I used to get kidney infections a lot. I have a weak right kidney, and they're also good for mouth sores. So if you get canker sores, you can get some birch bark and kind of make a compound out of it, kind of, and put it in something like a piece of gauze, kind of stick it on there. Okay, slippery elm. I was looking for the slippery elm. Here we go. Slippery elm is a medium-sized tree with grayish bark, usually found near streams. Unlike the American elm, its crown does not droop. Its leaves are also larger than the American elm, with coarsely toothed margins, blah, blah, blah. Slippery elm bark is available in dried and powdered forms, and you can get it from an herbalist. Like I said, you can get it from Star West Botanicals. Slippery elm is very high in calcium, and a pudding or tea of the bark can be ingested to help speed bone healing. See, I did not know that. The powdered bark in water makes a jelly that soothes bowel and urinary problems, sore throats, and diarrhea. Sore throats is what I'm familiar with. So that's just one of the many things that you can use. And almost every tree on the planet has some sort of beneficial or medicinal use. But like with anything else dealing with herbs, anything you're going to ingest into your body, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you do your research. And if you're, especially if you don't plan on seeking the services of a licensed professional or the opinion of a licensed professional or certified naturalist, naturist, doctor of naturopathy, herbalist, somebody who has training, formal training in this. And this is something that I would really like to get into. I would really like to become a certified herbalist. I know that it's kind of, it's considered an alternative science or an alternative medicine, but I don't really think that it is, because these are things that were there before traditional medicine. And so I really feel like traditional medicine is the alternative, whereas this is a far more natural method. But it does take some knowing. You need to know your body weight. You need to know your underlying conditions. You need to know, and certainly before you treat anybody else, you really need to get some formal training in that. But trees have more than just medicinal benefits. I've given you grounding. I've told you fuel. You know, it's good for wands. It's good for spell work. You can use parts of trees in spell work. Obviously, the nuts and the fruits. Again, watch for allergies and be cautious on that. But these are all things that we commonly use in practice, and people that have been practitioners for a while know very well. Oh yeah, we use that stuff all the time. We use acorns all the time. We use oak leaves all the time. We get apples constantly. I use orange, peel in my spells and that sort of thing. We also use them in our incenses. So these are things that I think are pretty commonly known, but we don't think about it out of context very frequently. And so this was just a way to kind of give homage to the trees and say, we really appreciate it. They're so powerful in so many ways. We literally could not live on this planet without them. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the Order of Bards, Obates, and Druids, they are a wonderful organization. And if you're really interested in learning that path, of course, trees are quite sacred to them in that path. I was a member. I have recently had to let my membership go, and my heart is breaking because we just couldn't afford to keep up the dues. But I fully plan on continuing the studies with the Gersh that I have, and hopefully by the time I'm finished with the studies that I currently have, that I've already gotten, I'll be able to pick my membership back up and continue it, because I would really like to continue learning about that. But they do have a program that will provide grants for planting sacred groves, which I think is an absolutely fantastic program. So if that is something you are interested in, go to the Order of Bards, Obates, and Druid. I believe it's druidry.org, and check them out. They are a great organization that was founded in England but is now spreading worldwide, and there are seed groups and groves all over, and so there are many ways you can get involved. I thank you again for watching. I realize that I probably didn't go into as much detail as some of you would like. If you have questions about a specific tree or something like that, let me know. I'm not an arborist. That's another thing that's been an interest of mine. I'd love to learn more about trees and how to identify the specific trees, but you can contact a local arborist in your area if you have a tree that you're not sure about. A lot of times the agricultural extensions have an arborist that they refer to, or who is on staff who can identify. Because, for example, I have a tree that just sort of sprouted up in my backyard one day, and it's gotten quite tall now, but it's very thin. The branches are very thin. It's not like a traditional tree with a trunk. It's just sort of a very thin branch with these beautiful kind of velvety leaves, and I would love to find out what kind of tree it is, because I don't have a clue. It just sprouted up next to my husband's statue of the Virgin Mary that was out there in the garden that we put out there after my mother-in-law died, and this beautiful tree sprouted up next to it, and it's gotten to where its branches are branching over like this and almost touching the oak tree I have in my backyard. And I have noticed we have another one that sprouted up in our garden out front, but I have no idea what it is, because it doesn't look like any other tree we have around here. So I don't know where it came from, but I plan on going to them. I found out recently that the Ag Extension can tell me or refer me to somebody who can identify that. There are also groups on Facebook for that. There's an herb identification group where you can post pictures and they can tell you what it is. So I invite you to explore these various options and really dig in and do some research, because trees are so phenomenally wonderful, so valuable, so important. Do not underestimate the power of a tree. With that, I appreciate your watching. Thank you very much and have a blessed evening.